Hi, welcome to the Brain Mama. My name is Kelly Jean Pittman, and today I'm going to talk to you about 3 things that every parent needs to know in order to build a strong and emotionally regulated brain within their child. Now, I work within a nonprofit, and I work with parents every day with children who are struggling. And the number one question that I get is why didn't I hear this information before? After I explain to them how normal human development works and what a child needs in order to build a strong brain, oftentimes it makes so much sense to the parents, but they're like, why didn't I know this before? Why has nobody told me? So I started thebrainmama.com so that I could spread this information. Motherhood has been one of the most challenging experiences in my life. It's been the most difficult job I have ever had to do. And at times I felt really alone, and I've been struggling to find information. And I don't want mothers to suffer. It's a very important job, and our children actually need us. And so I started thebrainmama.com because I want to give you this information. I want to share with you what I've learned and how amazing our wonderful, beautiful brain really is. There's so much we can do at home, from even pre-birth, that can help ensure that our child has the strongest brain possible and that they can emotionally regulate themselves. So before I talk about the top 3 things that I want to tell you, I want to give you a little bit of background on myself. I wanted to have a child, and it took 7 years. I went through 7 years of infertility, and there aren't even words to really explain how difficult that was, how crushing it was. Never could have I guessed how it would take me to these desperate, desperate lows. So if you're struggling with infertility out there, know that there's lots of help and lots of ways that you can have a child. And in no way, don't let any of my information discourage you, but only encourage you. I went through 7 years of infertility, and I did oral drugs. I shot myself up full of injections, and I did inseminations. We did 4 tries of IVF. I even used donor egg. I did all these different things. I had 2 miscarriages. And I had several surgeries, one that sent me in an ambulance to the hospital. So I had been through a lot by the time I finally gave birth. I actually did give birth to a beautiful, amazing son. But after we had our son, I'm like, my husband and I did not want to do this fertility thing again. It was emotionally devastating. So we decided we would adopt. And we thought it had to be easier than what we had just went through. That was my bad. We did adopt, but it was no way easy. And again, adoption is amazing and beautiful, and there's no way that I am looking down upon adoption. If your heart is set on adoption, and it's one of the most beautiful and amazing journeys that I've ever been on. But it was really, really difficult for us. We adopted our daughter from China, and when she got back, we just got home a couple days. In China, they told us to get her heart checked out well, because there was some issue. She was supposed to be healthy. Our child was deemed healthy. So we brought her home, and when we had her checked out, we found out that she was really, really sick. She needed open heart surgery, which was devastating for us. She also had an autoimmune disorder. She tested positive for TB. She needed regular blood draws, and we had to give her medication for autoimmune disorder. None of this was on her medical record. And about a week before we're to have the open heart surgery, the doctors did a heart cath on her, and they pulled us into this tiny little closet of a room, and they said, you know what, it's like your daughter is really, really sick. She may need a heart-lung transplant. Now, at that point, we were already praying very hard. Our knees hit the floor. I had to give everything up to the Lord pretty much, and we just prayed. This was beyond anything that I could handle at that time. She had her surgery, and it went miraculously well. Our prayers were answered. Our daughter did phenomenally. So after that time, I was prepared to grab my kids and love them up, and I had the only worries I anticipated maybe were skin knees, what to serve them for supper, and maybe to wipe their runny noses and stop a little fight or two. We finally got all the medical things under control. I was caught off guard by all the mental health issues my daughter had. She was only 2 years old, but one of the main things was that at that time she raged almost, I mean, at the time and right now it kind of feels like she raged all day. And I'm not talking tantrum where she's upset about something and throwing herself on the floor. Yeah, she could be throwing herself on the floor, but I'm talking raging where she's acting as if she's been beaten. And there's nothing that tangibly that makes sense that could trigger it. It comes out of the blue. And what I realize now is that she had major post-traumatic stress, and those were trauma triggers. So she was triggering over different things, probably such as smell, clothing, food, snow, all sorts of things triggered her. At the time, I didn't realize it. It just seemed kind of crazy. But amongst that, my daughter probably could be, you could probably throw out any disorder, and I would bet that she probably displayed that disorder at this time. Really, the ultimate symptom that she had was extreme anxiety. That was like the canopy over everything, was this anxiety piece. So she had sensory processing issues. Everything she touched, especially if it was bendy, she broke it. She'd go in a room and she'd have to touch everything around her. She had manic moods, the happiest child in the world to she was going to die. It was kind of crazy how she could go from 0 to 90 in a split second. She couldn't feel pain. If she fell down and come up all bloody and be laughing. But if I brushed her, barely touched her, as light as a feather, she would start screaming at me like I had, hit her or beaten her. There were so many different things that we struggled with. She had a learning disorder. She didn't know her ABCs. She only knew 7% of her alphabet in kindergarten. So she was slated for special ed. She had vision problems. She didn't want anything to do with me. I mean, she definitely had reactive attachment disorder. For those of you who don't know what it means not being able to form a trusting relationship with the primary caregiver, which would be the mother, which would be myself. She's told me she hated me many times, very angry at me, would fight me, dissociate from me. That was probably the hardest to deal with, especially in light of all that we had gone through, to get her here to have this cute, beautiful, amazing little girl to want nothing to do with me. So it was devastating. And what I realize now is that with attachment disorder, it's not really just attachment disorder. It is really a developmental trauma disorder, more aptly named by Bessel van der Kolk. And what that means is that all her neurological skills were out of whack. All the trauma that she experienced before she even came to our life, and then all that trauma that first year we adopted her and moving forward, just compounded the trauma. And so that made her anxiety go through the roof. So at one time, I didn't think she'd even be able to go to school. It was crazy. She would transition. We couldn't even go to the grocery store, to the grandparents, or to our cousin's birthday party without having major rages and out of control behavior. But right now, my daughter is a teenager. That was when she was 2 years old. And so I've spent over the last decade studying about our beautiful and amazing brain, and learned about what normal human development is, and learned about how important attachment is. And I can tell you that my daughter's in high school, and she's been an A student probably for the last couple of years. At her conferences, it's not uncommon. The teachers who tell me that she's the most calm, cool, and regulated kiddo in the classroom. She knows herself very well, her emotions and her feelings, and even the teachers admire that and wish that they had that introspective look at themselves that she has. Why she really wanted nothing to do with me and tried to control everything. She now writes me love letters and actually has thanked me for all the therapies and different things we had put her through, because it wasn't easy. And most of it was therapeutic parenting at home. And so sitting at one of her conferences, one of her teachers said, it's like, you know what? Your daughter's so kind. She's so sweet. She's so patient. She knows herself so well, and she's so smart. It's like she was born with it. She's a natural. And I believe, honestly, that we're all born with the ability to achieve those things, but life happens, and we kind of have to learn, really, that's why it's so important to learn how the brain works, so that we can give our brain the feedback that it needs to help promote positive growth in ways that can help us transcend and transform our lives into peace and calm and joy. And so what I want to share with you right now is the 3 things that every parent needs to know in order to build a strong brain in your child and to help keep that emotional regulation, help facilitate that emotional regulation in your child. Right now, ADHD, depression, anxiety, all those things are through the roof with the general population, but particularly with our children. So if you have a strong and healthy mind, those issues aren't as big of a concern if we keep building that strong brain within our child. So that's why it's so important. So number 1, I'm getting to number 1, and it may come to no surprise, but since I am the brain mama, but the number 1 thing that you can do for your child is to build strong brain health. And so that is key. That's very important. From day number 1, actually before your child is even born in womb, before you even have a child, it's really important. There are lots of things that you can do to help build a strong brain in your child. But right now we're talking about kiddos that are already been born, and it doesn't really matter what age they are, you can always change the brain, even in elderly, even in your spouse or your husband or your wife. It's like everybody's brain can change because of brain plasticity, so it's amazing. But the number 1 thing, there are lots of things that involve good brain health, but the number 1 thing that you really want to focus on, number 1, is nutrition. Yes, we are what we eat. That's not an old wives' tale. It's really important. They say that if the gut's inflamed, the brain's inflamed. And so, or vice versa, if the brain's inflamed, the gut's inflamed. In fact, research has said that our stomach, our gut, is our second brain. But I've just read new research that says now actually that our gut is our first brain. They've researched and found out that there's more neurons in the stomach than there actually are in our brain. So that is astounding. So what fuels the brain? That's very important. And it's not a lot of the stuff that we're currently feeding our children. When you are feeding your child, you want to make sure that it's nutrient dense, real food, organic. And in this sense, when I say organic, I mean living and breathing. We are living and breathing humans. We need to be fueled by living and breathing food. And so going beyond that, again, of course, organic is fantastic. There's so many chemicals and toxins within our environment that the more organic food you can feed your children, the better. But you really want to focus. Actually, the easiest way to do this is just focus on natural food, fruits and vegetables, and meat. You want to stay away from a lot of processed grains, and you want to stay away from gluten, because gluten has glyphosate on it, which is a neurotoxin, and all our wheat is contaminated unless it's organic. So it's really hard to avoid that, and there's so many toxins within our environment that gluten-free is really kind of the way to go in building healthy and strong brains. And so for brain health, you want to focus on nutrition. So that's one aspect of brain health. Another aspect is movement. Movement is absolutely critical in building a strong brain within a child, particularly when a child's very young and a baby. There's a very specific movement that a child goes through, and that is needed in order to build the lower levels of the brain. So that you want those to be solid, so that when they go into school and learning, that they can access their cortical functions easier. If the lower limbic system, the lower brain, is unstable, then you're going to have a lot of problems as they go into school with social skills and learning, and there's a whole bunch of things that can happen. So movement is key. So as a baby, you want that baby on their tummy. Tummy time is more important. I can't even say enough words for how important tummy time is. You want that baby on their tummy as much as you can, because that stimulation on the tummy and that movement and that crawling, that stimulates the pons level of the brain. That's the lower part of the brain, and that's the brain that tells us whether we're safe or not in the world around us. And so if you don't get that movement, regardless of whether you're adopted or not or have trauma, a child can go through life having a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear and a lot of depression. It's not uncommon. We always ask our clients what if the baby crawled, and we can always link back certain things to tummy crawling. hands and knees. So, and that pons level, if they don't have that movement, that's a lot of fear, anxiety, and depression. So you really want to have movement. You don't want your child, which brings me to number 3 on just the brain health list here. You really want to avoid screens with a very young child. That doesn't help the brain grow. In fact, it hampers it because number 1, it stops all movement. Number 2, it's not sensory. There's so many sensory processing issues right now that you really want your child engaged in the environment, moving, touching, feeling. You want all sorts of sensory input to that brain. And another aspect of brain health would be toxicities and chemicals. You really want to try to avoid them. You want to avoid toxic chemicals on their body, like lotions and shampoos within the household, and you don't want air fresheners, that aren't natural, or natural oils are okay, but you don't want the artificial stuff from what you wash their clothes in. You really want to clean up all those toxic chemicals because they are neurotoxins, so they affect the brain, and it's been absolutely proven that they do. And we have so much more than we ever had when I was growing up, for sure, and probably when you were growing up. So for strong brain health, you want to focus on food, you want to focus on movement, you want to focus on getting rid of the toxins, and you want to try to very much limit screens. So that's very important things in building that strong brain health within your child. Now, the second aspect that every parent needs to know about, which is much less heard, but very, very important, is attachment. Now, when I first got my daughter, I knew that, talking to our preschool teacher, her teacher was like, she's so smart. And he just was so excited to teach her all these different things. And I told the preschool teacher, I'm like, you know what? I could care less how smart she is. I don't care that her genius ability is like off the charts because she wasn't functioning emotionally well at all, and she wasn't attached to me at all. So I said, the number one thing that I need to build with her right now was an attachment with me. Because I said her happiness and future relationships depend on her being able to build an intimate, trusting relationship with me. If she couldn't do that with me, her mother, she's never going to be able to do that the rest of her life with anybody else. She's going to have a lot of issues concerning relationships. And relationships truly are one of the greatest gifts that we've been given as humans. And so luckily I had an awesome preschool teacher who's like, you know what? I totally get it. Her sister had adopted, and we worked out lots of ways to help improve the attachment piece within the preschool room, because I actually did work full time. So promoting this attachment piece was difficult. But once we got that attachment piece put together, all these other things kind of fell into place. It was amazing and beautiful, and my daughter could trust me, and we had this relationship, and we could work on other things. Attachment is so important, and actually there was a survey, and actually I read it quite a few years ago now, and they took a college study, and I think it was 40, obviously I can't quite remember, it was 40 or 60%, but it was pretty high, of the college students in college, they lacked empathy. If you don't have empathy, you're not attached, and you don't really care how people feel. If you don't care how people feel, you really don't care if you go into a classroom and shoot people's heads off. This attachment piece is really important. If you're attached to your primary caregiver, that relationship builds attachment with everyone else, and you really care about what your relationship is like with this person and with others. Even for my son, my birth child, who he was like the perfect child, absolutely perfect in every way, perfectly behaved, but he got into a lot of trouble in high school. He kind of got caught up in a lot of things that even I kind of knew. It's really hard in society. Even the brain mama has problems to say no and keep setting up all these the groundwork and rules to keep your child safe. But he got into some serious trouble. And you know what we did? Actually, I fell back on that attachment piece. My son was very much attached, strongly attached to us. In fact, we had him to attachment therapist, and she's like, he's the most attached kid I've ever seen. Even her own child was not as attached as he was. And so we pulled out everything for him. We cut out friends, we cut out screens, we cut out TV, we cut out job, we cut out his access to money. We cut everything off. But when I talk to parents of teenagers who are 17 years old, they say, no way. It's like, there's no way I could do that with my child. He would flip, he would go crazy, he would hurt me. My son had that attachment piece going. He knew he screwed up. He knew he took advantage of our trust. He wanted to rebuild that relationship. So attachment is really, really important, especially as your child goes into those teen years, because life is really tough and there's all sorts of things that want to grab them and take away their attention. I mean, from drugs to sex to pornography to so many different things. Our kids have access to so many things that it's critical that we build this attachment piece with our kids. And it's really hard now because of there is so much more lack of movements, and there's dual parents working. All those different things make it difficult to build that attachment piece, but there's lots you can do. And so if you're interested in all this information, please sign up for the Brain Mama newsletter. And I send out monthly updates, and I have articles on my blog that address all these different areas to help give you some free tips and what you can do to help build attachment and a healthy and strong brain. Now, we still have one more thing left. Number 3, the number 3 thing that parents need to know. And this one is really directed at you, Mom. And I'm gonna apologize before I even say this one, because it almost sounds ridiculous. And it's almost unfair. So I apologize before I say this. But the number 3 thing that you need to do as a mom is you have to let go of your fear. Yes, your fear. I know this is really difficult, because if you ask me the definition of what a mom is, I would say pretty much fear. Since that child was placed into my arms, the thing that gripped me like nothing else was fear. Fear of my child getting hurt in any way possible. And so that mother fear kind of drives our actions and drives everything that we do. But we really have to let go of that fear, because there's so much fear in our society today, and we have so much access via social media and TV and movies. Everything evokes this fear. And so if you have this little kiddo and this little baby and this child, and you have great attachment and attunement is really what we want to have. If you have that, but you're parenting out of fear, yes, is your child going to feel safe, or are they going to be fearful? Our children are like sponges, so they're not going to feel safe. We think our fear and all this is trying to keep them safe. That's what we're doing. But if it's out of fear and anxiety, you're smothering your child. I'm smothering my children in this fear and anxiety that they can't really get out of. You're scared. If the mom's scared, they're scared. They don't feel safe in the world. And so it's really important moving forward that we start peeling away these different levels of fear. But that's why it's really important at the Brain Mama, why I want to share this information with you. Because if you know about these different things, how to build a strong and healthy brain, how to make brain health a priority with your children, if you know how to promote attachment, and if you know how to kind of peel away those levels of fear, you have the ability to build this strong and resilient brain in your child. You can help them melt away anxiety, whether it's anxiety within myself, within my kids, within my husband. There's so much we can do to help peel these different layers away. Because when you're anxious and you're functioning out of fear, it's not your real self or your real personality. Sometimes I have parents ask me, well, I don't want to change my child's personality when they're functioning out of fear. They're dysregulated. They have lots and lots of issues, and they think that for some reason this is like their personality. This is who they're meant to be. And it's not. It's like, take the most stressful situation that you can think of, whether it's somebody that you love dying, and take that fear, take that anxiety, and then try to function in that fear and anxiety. And then have someone tell you, oh, that's the real you, and that's the person you're supposed to be. Absolutely not. When our children have extreme anxiety, they're not functioning out of their true selves. They're functioning out of their stress response. Stress response isn't personality. So when we help to minimize all this anxiety through brain health attachment and letting go of our fear, we get to let their true personality shine. So there you have it, the 3 things that you can do as parents to help build a strong brain and an emotionally regulated child. Now, if you'd like to learn more about this, please sign up for my newsletter. And also, I have written a book called God Save Me from Motherhood, and it really is my journey through infertility and adoption and all the things that I've learned about the brain and kind of how I've kind of come full circle and learned what I have learned and that what I want to share with you. So please sign up for my newsletter. When you do that, you'll also get updates of when my book is going to be released. Right now, I'm in the process of doing final edits, and so I'm not sure, but when it will come out, but I will keep you updated with that. And then stay tuned. I also release videos as well, so check out the Brain Mama on YouTube as well to look for more videos that talk about the 3 things that you need to do, and I'll expand upon different things that you can actually incorporate into your family and your household and with your children. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.